Hello, everyone. Welcome all to Michigan Birding 101, our fall refresher course. Welcome to those of you who are brand new to our series. I am Elliot Nelson with Michigan Sea Grant, and this is a continuation of a four-part fall series we've had, or four-part spring series we had on Michigan birding. And we're so excited to be back here with you today again. We have had a lot of amazing uh, impacts from our spring class. We had a lot of folks attend. A lot of people said they really got a lot out of it. And so we thought we've got to bring this back. So we're back here with the quick 2 sessions for this fall before we'll probably do another round of sessions in the spring. So let's dive right into it. We have some objectives today in this class. And the very first is for you to have fun and to get your questions answered. And of course, as always, to see cool bird pictures from our awesome bird photographer friends who allow us to use their photos. So that's our first one. Our second big thing is that we will be able to walk through, hopefully, the steps of bird identification day. So we're going to do a quick super speed version of what we did back in the spring of teaching you how to go through the steps of looking at and identifying a bird. And we will also looking at some of the key characteristics of fall migration. Fall migration is well underway in the state of Michigan, and it's a little different than spring migration. So we'll talk about that and what some of those characteristics are. And then finally, we'll drop a few tips and hints for you at the end of the day to really help you create a safe and environmentally conscious backyard habitat that's good for birds. So with that, I am Elliot Nelson, and I am an extension educator with Michigan Sea Grant. I'm based up here right now tonight at Sault Ste. Marie, and I do a lot of different types of work. I just was teaching seventh graders at a seventh grade camp all day today. And so I do a lot of K-12 education around Great Lakes and aquaculture. I also work with aquaculture farms and do some coastal tourism. And so this kind of fits into my K-12 or my adult education kind of work, as well as tying into tourism around birding. And also in the back, we have Cindy Hudson, the amazing communicator with us, who's based in East Lansing. Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy, and I absolutely love birding, but I enjoy listening to Elliot talk about birds even more. So I was really looking forward to tonight. So I'm so glad you are all here to join us for this.
Yeah. So so we're going to dive right in. I'm going to first be telling you a little bit about Sea Grant. So we are a program that's out there to help foster economic growth and protect Great Lakes coastal ecosystems through our three organizations through Michigan State University Extension, the University of Michigan, and NOAA. So this is a partnership between these three organizations. NOAA provides the funding, U of M provides our research office and communications office, and Michigan State provides the extension educators like myself who live across the state, as well as communicators like Cindy and Lansing. And we do our work through research by funding research projects, and then through education. So we have education programs like this throughout the state of various times of years. And then we also do outreach in that we connect directly with businesses and fish farmers and commercial fishers and charter captains and provide them assistance and try to help promote best practices throughout a variety of Great Lakes industries. And so we, like I said, we have 4 focus areas. We do environmental literacy and workforce development, resilient communities and economies, lots of work on climate change and economic resiliency. We work very closely with the fisheries and aquaculture industries and regulatory agencies and all sorts of different things. It has to do with fish. We're involved in some way, probably. And then healthy coastal ecosystems. We help restore native ecosystems and promote best practices for ecosystem management. And like I said, we live across the state. So I'm up here in Sault Ste. Marie. We have folks in just about every region of the coastal parts of Michigan, as well as Ann Arbor and MSU. And we have lots of great NOAA partners like our NOAA GLERL Lab in Ann Arbor, or the Thunder Bay Marine Sanctuary in Alpena. So NOAA has a great presence across the state beyond just our weather agencies. All right, so I want to hear a little bit about you. I haven't had too much time to look at the chat, but we've got a good 100 or so or more of you on the call today. So really quick, just put in the chat, name, the general location. You can put county or town or whatever, don't need to get specific. And really what I want to hear is, what birds have you seen over the summer? So a lot of you attending were on our spring, early, kind of late winter class that we hosted. And we sent out a survey to hear that a lot of you were out birding this summer. So I'm really curious, can you put in the chat for me right now, what birds did you see over the summer? And this is a good time maybe to just remind you or let you know that we have a chat feature, and we love hearing your chats. It's a great place where you can share a little bit about what's going on. Leah Kraus says that she got to see got blue-gray gnatcatcher, which is a wonderful little bird, really cheeky little fella. I like those a lot. Dennis from Grand Rapids got to see a green heron this summer. And so I love seeing all these comments. Please keep telling us, share what were some cool things. We got some folks that got to see orioles this summer, bald eagles, over 51 species in somebody's big backyard here. That's really impressive. So really cool, really neat to see what's going on. And please, throughout the night tonight, use the chat to let us know your thoughts and to share interesting tidbits that maybe you have, because this is really a communal learning knowledge. If you were on our spring calls, there was always a lot of chatter and people sharing tips and tricks for birding and how to attract birds and cool stories they have. So please use the chat throughout the night to do that. If you have questions, then there is actually a separate box, the Q&A box. And you can use the Q&A box to ask questions that I will try to answer as they come in. Cindy can interrupt me at any point. I'll try to just keep an eye on them too and answer questions as they come in. And we are going to save some time, just a little bit, not as much as we normally do, but some time at the end to get to some of your questions about the topics we covered tonight. So again, thank you so much for sharing in your chat. Somebody else got to see the spoonbill in saline. That was a really special bird that came to Michigan for the first time ever recorded in Michigan, that species. So some really cool stuff that folks were out seeing this summer. All right, we're gonna dive then in a little bit more. You can still feel free to keep plopping in the chat your different cool sightings from the summer. But I want to talk a little bit to you about, first off, just the nature of fall birding and why I think it's probably the most fun. And gosh, spring migration is amazing. If you were birding this spring, you know that it's just a whirlwind tour of bright colors and pops of warblers. But fall's different, and I think it really gives you time to appreciate migration because it's a little more dispersed, it's a little more diverse, and it has everything from subtle to spectacular. So let's get into a few of those things. Well, first off, I want to just tie it back to, though, the fact that fall migration is intimately linked to the Great Lakes here. So the Great Lakes are an amazing region if you want to be a birder and to live in, if you want to be a birder and you're into birds, because it is at the intersection of two major migratory flyways. So migratory flyways are like the super highway of birds, where literally billions and billions of birds migrate across every spring and every fall. And if you look at that top photo there, it shows that the Mississippi Flyway, this is kind of generalized in green, and the Atlantic Flyway in blue really kind of meet together in the Great Lakes. And that's because a lot of birds don't, especially songbirds and raptors, they try to minimize how much time they spend over open water. And the Great Lakes essentially are that big barrier from them. And what it means is when the birds reach the shoreline, they follow the shorelines till they see a short crossing, like maybe from Isle Royal to the Keweenaw, or from Whitefish Point to across from Canada, down at Tawas, down to Saginaw, the tip of the thumb. Those are places where birds jump across the water, but they get really concentrated before they move across. And not only is it that we have birds coming from the central plains of Canada, we also have birds coming from the very Hudson Bay and up in the eastern part of the Atlantic, North Atlantic. And so we get these really amazing mixing of all these birds that get concentrated by the Great Lakes. And the Great Lakes are super essential for them, not just by the geography, but also because they provide a lot of food for the birds, and the birds provide ecosystem services to the lakes as well. Over the summer, many island nesters may have been contributing nutrients to those islands and changing them through their waste. There are studies that show that birds provide a variety of ecosystem services in terms of helping keep a balance in the Great Lake. They also remove tons and tons of mosquitoes. So if you're not a big fan of mosquitoes, you should be a big fan of birds because they eat a lot of those mosquitoes. So they provide a lot of ecosystem services, and they provide a lot of tourism opportunities, like the Crane Fest I'll mention a little bit later, that's taking place in the first week of October down in the greater Lansing area in Belleville. And yeah, they provide a host of different tourism opportunities. Michigan is one of the greatest birding states in the nation, and really does attract people from around the world who come here to see our super rare things like Kirtland's warblers, but also just the amazing diversity of birds that we have. So birds in the Great Lakes are deeply connected, and the coastal communities around the Great Lakes can benefit a lot from taking advantage of those tourism opportunities and those ecosystem services. All right, now a little bit more in depth about fall migration. So first off, fall migration is the most diverse time of year to bird. eBird is a place where people submit their bird sightings, and then you can kind of look at all the data over time. And currently in eBird, there are 405 species in the months of August through, actually in the months of September through November. And then you compare that to the spring months of March through May, there's only 392, still a lot, but a little less. The summer's 361. And that last one should say winter, 276. So really, fall is the most diverse time, and you get a lot of interesting things, including over 30 species of warblers. And these are really brightly colored and fascinating species, but in the fall, they're a little more subdued. I'll come back to that. But in the fall, you can also have a chance to see rare ones like Connecticut warbler, which has been popping up in the Arb. I've been in the Ann Arbor area. There's been a few that across the state. This is a really good time to see this really rare, difficult to find warbler species because they're a little bit more, the young are a little less shy than the adults. And this is a picture of a Connecticut warbler from my friend Sky Haas, who let us use his photos. Thanks, Sky. And there's also other really amazing things. In the fall, you have 3 months of waterfowl migration, an incredible waterfowl like the redneck grebe shown here that has a massive migration near Whitefish Point with tens of thousands of redneck grebes. A really significant percentage of the North American population flies by Whitefish Point every fall in huge numbers, but it's stretched out over 3 months of every different type of waterfowl, ducks and loons and grebes all moving through. And then we get some things in the fall that we'd never even see in the spring, like the Baird sandpiper, which is up at the top there. That Baird sandpiper is a species that only comes through in the fall. In the spring, they're so rare that you have to actually submit a rare bird record form to the Michigan Bird Records Committee. It's very official, yes. But there's a whole committee that reviews rare birds, and in the spring, you have to submit this bird as a super rare bird. But in the fall, they're not common, they're not everywhere, but they're definitely expected in many places throughout Michigan in the fall, like Whitefish Point, where I just saw a dozen a few weeks ago. And then this buff-breasted sandpiper is another example, all pictures from Sky there. So really, really neat that there is a lot of different types of birds that are coming throughout the fall. Now, like I said, it is stretched out. So it's really dispersed. And really, I would say like the last week of July is when fall migration starts, right? You're probably like, what, the last week of July? I'm still, got the bathing suits out, got the grill out, we're going to the beach, going on the boat. Well, the end of July is when shorebirds from the tundra peace out and start heading south. They go up there for a short amount of time to lay their eggs, to raise their young, and it only takes a few weeks. And some of the ones that don't stay with the young will maybe start heading south in July, and you'll really have shorebird migration all through the month of August. Raptors are another one that start pretty early in August. They'll start dispersing and they'll start forming kettles throughout the month of August and into September. Shorebirds are again late July through September, and tanagers, vireos, flycatchers, and orioles, the really tropical, bright colored birds, they're gone by the end of September. But we're still in September now. So even now, these different groups of birds can be moving through. And those are kind of the earlier waves, along with warblers, which start, in August as well. But then warblers will keep coming, and there will be different species like orange-crowned warbler and yellow-rumped warbler that will be migrating all through August. And then really waterfowl migration picks up in September. It goes all the way through November. Even into December, it will still get a movement of waterfowl as lakes start to freeze up and move them around a bit. And sparrows come through. I've already started to get my first big flocks of white-throated sparrows and white-crowned sparrows here at Lake Superior State University, where I am. Went a little walk at lunch yesterday and finally started to see those sparrows flocks just as the warbler flocks are starting to move out. And then, of course, huge flocks of blackbirds. Maybe you've had them descend on your feeders, the grackles in the hundreds that will cover your lawn, or the red-winged blackbirds, and they're moving through in really big groups all the way through November. So all the way from August, or really the end of July to November, is fall migration. It's a long dispersed migrational period, which really I think is great because it gives you a lot of opportunities to focus on different birds that can be a little harder in the fall because their colors are all going to be more subdued. So birds molt every year. They lose their feathers and they grow new ones, and they have different cycles. Some molt once or twice. But warblers are one that we really like because they're really bright and fun colored birds, but in the fall, they're not so bright anymore. These are pictures from the Peterson Field Guide that show pretty much all the eastern warblers. And you might be looking at that thinking, that is a lot of gray and yellowish birds. Like, what is going on there? And if you are familiar with warblers in the spring, all these birds have a lot of color. The black-throated blue warbler has this deep slate blue, and the American redstart's all covered in black with some bright orangish splotches on it. The black Vernian warbler's throat is the color of fire. And so, yes, spring warblers are arguably really, really more beautiful and more spectacular. But in the fall, they get this really unique kind of subdued plumage that helps them stay a little more secretive on their way south to their wintering grounds, where they're going to fuel up for, again, a whole nother cycle of spring migration and laying eggs. And they can be a little tough, but I think it's a really fun time to work on your ID skills. And, they look a little confusing, but this website here, I don't know if Cindy can put it in the chat. It's a great website that helps bring you through a bunch of decision trees that really simplifies fall warblers. And again, I really love the Peterson Field Guide. I have the app that I can pull up on my phone that helps me kind of scan through. But you can start with simple things like wing bars or no wing bars. And that's how Peterson splits up these 2 pages. And then you can also start to look at things like, is there yellow or is there no yellow on the breast? That kind of really gets you down again to a lot less choices. And then you can start working out some of the finer plumage points. But even things like, the Connecticut warbler, which is a rare warbler that a lot of people want to see. It's very secretive. And Nashville warbler, these can look very similar. But if you look, structure becomes really important too. So like the Nashville or Connecticut warbler has a rather large bill. It's kind of bulky for a warbler, and the Nashville warbler has a pretty petite bill and an overall more petite body shape than the Connecticut. Plus, the Connecticut warbler tends to stay on the ground, where Nashville can be more up in the trees. So you can start to get into some of these really cool things about bird identification that you can't just rely on the bright colors sometimes in the fall. And I think that really makes us better birders by having to really dive a bit deeper into bird migration and into bird identification. So that's that on the subtleness of fall migration. I also want to say it's subtle because the birds are not trying to draw attention to themselves. They're not singing their spring calls where they want to attract a mate. They're not as jacked up on hormones as they are in the spring, all ready to start making spring calls. And when you pitch in the spring, making that shh noise, trying to see if they'll come to that. They come into the spring, but not as much in the fall because they're really just interested in heading south and conserving energy. But it can also be spectacular. And I'm noticing that this video here plopped right up on top, but that's all right. Fall migration can also be completely spectacular. So this is a video I want to watch really quick. And I'm just going to reshare it again real quick so I make sure I have sound on. And this is a migration video of hawks, and it's actually not from Michigan, but it shows you the amount of hawks that can sometimes be in the sky. Let's take a look at this really quick. Just look at that. This is what's called a kettle. When hawks group up and ride a warm air lift up, they get really high before they start streaming across to go migrate. So they use that warm air to just lift them without spending energy, and then they soar across as far as they can on their migration route. And you just saw that was like an amazing funnel of raptors there. And that is something that happens in Michigan. We can get literally hundreds of thousands of raptors in a single day in Michigan. There is one of the for a long time, the world record of single day broadwing migration, broadwing hawk migration was out of the Detroit International Wildlife Refuge. And they have massive numbers of broadwing hawks in September. It's a great place to go now to see a spectacle of hawk migration that can just blow your mind. You got to get the right day and be lucky where the weather just pushes them in the right place. But on any day, you'll still see probably dozens of hawks. And on lucky days, you might see hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of hawks in a matter of hours. That kind of spectacle, to see that many raptors, these predators that you normally only see one of at a time, they like to disperse. All of a sudden in the fall, especially broadwing hawks are migrating these huge groups that it just blows your mind. And of course, we have those beautiful sandhill cranes too.
Hey, Elliot, can I just say? So I was up at Whitefish Point, and we saw the hawk, a good nice kettle, but it was hawks, and there were a few eagles, and there were some other. So it isn't just like one type of hawk. There'll be a whole bunch. It's like when blackbirds are out there. It's all the different kinds of birds, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the broadwings are the ones that migrate really in these huge numbers at the same time on certain days. But it is a diversity. You'll have a dozen or so different species. From at the Detroit Hawk Watch at the Detroit International Wildlife Refuge. And so, yeah, you'll get vultures mixed in and eagles, and you'll get peregrine falcons whizzing through at these migration spots, Cooper's hawk, sharp-shinned hawk, rough-leg hawk later in the season, northern harrier. So yes, not just broadwing hawks, but still it's that spectacle really that I like to think of as the broadwing hawks really make it the spectacle that it is. And same thing again, sandhill cranes are another spectacle. We have literally hundreds that gather up in different places. Here in Pickford, we just had someone share a picture of almost 300 sandhill cranes in one farm field the other day. Just a really tall, magnificent bird. And they start to do a dance in the fall, a courtship style dance. So you'll see them in these fields just dancing and acting silly. And at the Baker Sanctuary in Belleville is Crane Fest, which is coming up on the 9th and 10th, hosted by the Kiwanis Youth Conservation Club or Kiwanis Club of the area. And that's a chance to see at nighttime, the cranes come in and you'll see hundreds of these massive cranes just flying over your head. Again, a beautiful sight, some really incredible spectacles, I like to call them. So I have a question for you, and I'm going to review the Q&A and chat here for a second, but where would you want to go birding this fall, or where have you already been birding this fall? So where are some of the places that you're interested in getting out to this fall? And maybe it's just your own backyard. Nothing wrong with that. Backyard birding is awesome. And fall migration is a great time to get hopefully lucky and see some rare birds in your own backyard. But where else do you want to see? We've got some folks that want to see the cranes at Kensington Metro. That's a pretty good place to see cranes. They're there in the summer a lot of times too. They nest there. And then places like Belleville and Jackson are these congregation place. Tawas, somebody asked, is that good in the fall? Yeah, that's great in the fall. It doesn't have the numbers in the short amount of time, like in the spring, there's like 2-3 weeks where you just have thousands of birds coming through Tawas, but you still have them in the fall. And yeah, you've got cranes in the UP, like in Rudyard and Pickford, where they gather in the fields, where somebody said they like to go. Along the shorelines are great places to be, anywhere in a Great Lakes shoreline. The Maple River State Game Area north of Lansing is a really great fall migration spot, especially come late September, early October for waterfowl. You can see hundreds of teal and other ducks there. So yeah, lots of cool places to get out and be and see this fall. So hopefully you can head to Lake Erie Metro Park is a really good one. You can head to all sorts of metro parks downstate and wildlife refuge areas. So lots of good opportunities. The Muskegon Wastewater is a great place to go in the fall. Whitefish Point, Peninsula Point, Neskanaba area. That's a great place in the fall. So really cool to see all these awesome things. Somebody asked about the hawk migration. So I don't know, Cindy, if you can find a link to that and pop it in, but it's the Detroit Hawk Watch at the Detroit International Wildlife Refuge. And I believe it is at Lake Erie Metro Park, I want to say. It's at one of the metro parks on the coast there. And I believe it's at Lake Erie Metro Park. So that's where you can go and hopefully see some of those fall hawk migration spectacles. And Whitefish Point is a place somebody asked, can you go there in the fall? Yeah, Whitefish Point is amazing in the fall. I like it in the fall more than I like it in the spring. It's right on Lake Superior, so weather can be crazy, but it's a beautiful place right next to Tequamanon Falls. And you can go there to see hundreds of redneck grebes migrating this time of year, and maybe some rarities that might show up. I was just there a few weeks ago and got to see an ash-throated flycatcher, which is extremely rare for Michigan. I was really happy to be there the day it was found. So lots of good ideas on where to go and where to see stuff. There's a few questions. Another question in the Q&A. I think I'll come back to that one at the end here. So, all right. So we're going to move on now, just keeping track of our time here, and we're going to transition a little bit. So that's kind of a quick, fast overview of fall migration. You know, it's very diverse. It's more dispersed, so you don't get it concentrated just in like the month of May, like in the spring. But it also has spectacles, like where there's just thousands of birds around, and it will have also subtle things to enjoy, like the subtlety of fall warblers. So that is fall migration in Michigan in a nutshell. Now we're gonna jump into a refresher in a little bit here about how to use your equipment and how to identify some birds. So first off, if you were with us in the spring class, we covered how to use your binoculars, and we put at the start of this, as well as in the emails, and if you just Google Michigan Birding 101 MSU extension, you'll get a really good tutorial on how to use your binoculars. And the really important thing is to remember to adjust your diopter. Most binoculars have a single eye adjustment for the right eye that helps you adjust if your two eyes have different strength. Which I did this past spring when we taught the class, and realized my eyes must have shifted because I needed to adjust my diopter. And it's a good thing to just check in and adjust, because it can get bumped and moved. Essentially what you do is you lift your binoculars up, you cover the right eye, or you lift your binoculars up, you get in focus, you cover your right eye, focus on an object, then switch to the other eye and you adjust the diopter and get that one in focus. And then your binoculars are all set up for you individually to be just right. So really make sure you double check your diopters this fall. Again, if your binoculars sat over the summer a little bit, you weren't using them as often, or you moved them around and bumped them, or you were using them every day, but you hadn't adjusted them, they'll probably need to be adjusted again. So adjust that diopter. And then just as a reminder, or for those of you that maybe weren't there, when you're using binoculars, the really big key is to make sure to get a sense of what you're looking for before you put your binoculars up. So especially with songbirds and really fast little moving birds, people will be like, oh, it's right there. And I've seen a lot of times people will grab their binoculars and they will just instantly put their binoculars up, and they'll be, I don't know, where, wait, where, because when you look up, all of a sudden your whole landscape changes and you get very disoriented. So the key is to first look for where the bird is with just your naked eye. Even if you can't see it, ask people to give you some of the features that are near there. So, maybe it's right on top of that pine tree that's out in the middle of the field, just to the left of the house. Okay, now I see the pine tree. I might not see the bird, but I at least know, okay, I'll look for that pine tree. And then once you've got that spot, either the bird or where you think the bird is really close to, keep your eyes on it and then just lift your binoculars up. So don't look down and then bring your head up like this. You want to just keep your eyes focused straight on that spot where you think you need to see the bird, and don't look away and lift up your binoculars. So, that's the key really, is to, make sure your binoculars are working right, adjust the diopter, and then when you're ready to bird, find that bird and find the references that are close to the bird before you lift up your binoculars, and then keep your eye on the bird and lift. All right, so that's a real fast run through of how to use your binoculars. But just wanted to cover that again in case you forgot to adjust your diopter over the summer or didn't know about that. And then, just in general about keep calm, look for the birds, look for a few references before you lift up your binoculars. And so next is a little bit about some of the field skills that you'll want to use. So when you see a new bird, it might move really fast, but you're hopefully going to get at least a little bit of time to observe the bird. And I always say, observe the bird as long as you can, with the exception of maybe like a sleeping duck on a log or something that's going to be there for like a long time. Most birds, you're limited on how much you'll actually get to look at that bird. So before you pull out your field guide or before you pull out your phone, take the time to study that bird, observe the bird, really start to take notes on the 5 things I'm going to show you next, and take those notes mentally. And then maybe even start to jot down, get into the habit of jotting down the key features you saw in a pocketbook, in a notebook, on a note on your phone. Jot down those things after you observe the bird before you pull up your field guide. Because once you pull up your field guide, whether it's an app or a book, you're going to start looking through and you're going to start saying, oh, like this bird kind of looked like that. Well, that probably not that bird. That's from the Western U.S., but maybe there's some of you from the Western U.S. You're going to start to say, hey, this bird had some of the same features, and then you'll look at the next page and be like, oh, but it actually looks like it looked like a sparrow, and I thought it was this sparrow with the white patch on the throat, but now I'm like, oh yeah, but it also had stripes on the head, so maybe it's this one. And you start to get confused, and you're looking at the pictures, and you're not looking at the bird anymore. You go, you really get overwhelmed. You're like, I don't know. That happens to me still on a regular basis. But the key I'm trying to make here is that once you open your book or you open your field guide, you're going to start to lose the mental memories that you had, and you're going to start remembering it wrong. So really take some notes and take your time to observe the bird. After you've had that chance to do that, then you're going to want to consult your field guide. Okay, but again, when you're observing the bird, there's really a number of key things that you want to be looking for. And we're going to practice this. So observe the bird, that's the first thing. But the first thing you might want to look at generally is the structure of the bird, as well as patterns and relative size, behavior, and location. So right now, just in the chat, there's a bird on the screen here. Can anybody type in the chat? You don't have to say what species it is. Please don't say what species it is yet. What I would want you to do is to, start saying some of the features. So structurally, it has a very short tail compared to its body length, right? And short is a relative term, but it's short compared to its body, right? It's way shorter than its body, or even it's almost as short as its bill. And it has a narrow bill. That's a great observation too. The beak is almost as long as the head. It would go farther beyond the eye. So some of the things we see, again, we got short tail. If you look, that tail, relative to the body is really quite short. And the longish bill, that is almost as long as the head if we would to flip that over. So those are 2 structural things right away. And then we're getting some folks that are mentioning some stuff about patterns. So we notice a dark cap that's contrasted with a really white eye line, right? And cheek patch. And so that's a really distinctive, really sharp contrast. Not just that, even in bad lighting, you would still probably notice that contrast between the dark top of the head and the light bottom. And then somebody I think mentioned, there's a little bit of a wing stripe, a very subtle wing stripe, and of course this this kind of bluish, dark bluish, black, grayish back. And then some other stuff's coming in about structurally. Structurally, this bird is very long, right? It's very flat and long. It's not a big, deep-chested bird. It's not perched upright. So these are all great things about structure and pattern that you can recognize. So structure and pattern are kind of the 2 first things, but I don't like to use the terms color and size because color and size are relative, right? But patterns are kind of more distinct and easier to describe consistently, even if the lighting is going to make that bird look washed out, or if the bird is very faded in the fall, because you're going to see that a lot more. And so those are, I think, with this species, some of the things I would look at right away is structure and pattern. That long, stretched out body, that super short tail, a relatively long and narrow bill, and then the pattern of that black cap with the white eye line is very striking, and then with that grayish, bluish back. And so for this case, you would stay on that bird, take the notes, and then consult your field guide. And so here again, on the left is that bird. And another version of it here. And I'm going to put up the field guide from the National Geographic Birds of North America. It's a great field guide I have a copy of. And these are the nuthatches. So nuthatches are birds that have that very elongated body. And if you want to put in the chat what species we have here, you are more than welcome. You can probably connect the dots at this point. They do, as somebody is noting too, they do have a very unique behavior, which is one of those other features. Their behavior is that they climb vertically vertically along the tree as opposed to horizontally just perching on the branches. They actually climb along the tree, somewhat similar to a woodpecker, except their woodpeckers pretty much always stay upright. Nuthatches will climb down the tree, up the tree, around the tree. They're very agile little creatures, and they have a very distinctive way of that they perch on trees, where they always stay kind of elongated and they always creep up and down. So if you haven't figured it out yet, these are white. This is a white-breasted nuthatch here on the left. And I threw in, just to kind of mix it up a little bit, a red-breasted nuthatch, which has, again, a very similar structure and behavior. But the patterns are what's going to help differentiate here, because in this case, the patterns are showing you a white eye line that's, again, contrasted with black this time on the eye line here. So white supercilium or eyebrow really, and black eye line with a black cap. And so that's a little different than the all white cheek patch. So even if you don't see the red breast of the red-breasted nuthatch, that head gives it right away. So there's a little kind of run through where you're looking at those structures, you're looking at those patterns, you might even cue in on behaviors, and those can help you connect the dots that this is a nuthatch, and then really even more specifically, the species of nuthatch. All right. So this is another bird that I think is really great with pattern and relative size. So again, you can put in the chat, and this is a fall bird that's going to start showing up at your feeders in the next months or so. I will just tell you relative size, because you can't probably tell that from this. This is about the size of a, it's smaller than a robin, I'll say, and it's larger than a chickadee. All right, so it's smaller than a robin and it's larger than a chickadee. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about relative size. Compare the bird size to a known species. If you have a robin nearby, or maybe like a mourning dove, which is similar to a robin size, you can look and see, is that bird smaller or larger? And then that kind of gets you into a whole category of birds right away, once you know the relative size compared to, say, like my references are normally a chickadee, a robin, and like once you get above that, like a crow probably would be the next one. So those are 3 good reference points that you can often use. Maybe throw bluebirds into the middle or something. But so what are some things that people are noticing here? So yeah, so when I said it's larger than a chickadee and smaller than a robin, somebody keyed in, oh, that puts it in the sparrow size group, which was great. I was trying not to say sparrow size, so somebody came up with that. Jan, that's great. So it's a sparrow sized bird that gives us a relative size. I see some great comments about structure: stubby beak, deep chest and belly. That's great. And then Geneva there. And then, yeah, it also is got a relatively short neck. And then some of the patterns, it has a white edging on the tail, and that's a really key pattern. And then of course it has that very sharp, sharply white belly there and very dark top. So this puts it in the sparrow category. And so I'm going to show you the Sibley Birds of North America book, and they have a page that shows all the sparrows. Now you're probably not going to find the exact sparrow on here, especially because this one's a slightly different color morph than the one they have on there. But of these options, you know, these are all the sparrow-sized birds. And if we start to think about that pattern, this bird has a bright white belly contrasted with a very, you know, dark top. Which birds on here have really that sharp contrast without, you know, a lot of streaking or a lot of brown streaking? So a dark back, you know, darker than brown for sure, and you know, that white belly. So you may see a few you could put in the chat if you're seeing some on this page that have that contrast of the white belly and the dark back. Feel free to put some guesses in there. Yeah, there's a few. The black-throated sparrow and the five-striped sparrow have that kind of contrast with the black back and the white belly. The eastern towhee has that. The dark-eyed junco has that black back and a white belly, or that dark back, darkish gray, and a white belly. The American tree sparrow also has a dark back and a white belly, but that one has bright wing bars and a brown back, so that's probably not going to be in our category. So if we narrow it down to towhee, five-striped sparrow, black-throated sparrow, and dark-eyed junco, we've just gone from the 400 possible birds in Michigan in the fall, probably really the 300 and so that are more common. And then you get it down to just the sparrows, which gets you down to 20, 30 birds. And then we see that contrast, and that gets us down to just 3 or 4 options. And if you look at those birds in your book, you'll see that only the towhee and the junco would be expected in Michigan. Five-striped sparrow, black-throated sparrow, very restricted ranges to southwestern United States. It's very unlikely it's going to be one of those. Plus, both of those have face stripes, which this one does not. And so that probably has gotten you to the point where you think, well, it doesn't look as big as a towhee, or maybe it doesn't have that wing patch like that. And it also doesn't have a white rump like this one that you can see a little bit. So that gets us to the juncos, and juncos have a wide variety of colors, but the structure is always the same. The white outer tails are always the same. They come in many morphotypes across the country, and even just our morphotype or our subspecies here in the east, the slate colored, even that individual can come in a lot of variants, but the white belly is always a thing. The gray back's always a thing. The white outer tail feathers are always a thing. So that pattern really comes in handy there. All right. So you guys are getting good at this. All right. Now this bird name is on there. So you probably already know what this is, but I just want to show you that sometimes behavior can be one of the most important keys. Like the nuthatch, what behavior you think is distinctive here? Can anyone, I'll play that again. Can anyone put in the chat, what is the behavior that's really distinctive in this bird? What is it doing that maybe not all birds do? Oh, all right, I gotta keep up on the chat here. Yes, the tail bobbing, the tail flicking, or tail wagging, as some people call it. So this is an eastern phoebe, and it's one of our flycatchers, which all look insanely the same. Flycatchers are groups of drab graybacks and kind of lighter bellied birds, and they have very, very subtle physical differences. And there's a huge group of them, probably 4 of them, that I would say are almost impossible to identify by their visuals. You really have to have only the audio of them to be able to identify them properly. But the eastern phoebe is the only flycatcher really that bobs and wags its tail so regularly. So if you see a flycatcher, you're going to be like, oh, it's not going to make noise. It's in the fall. Fall flycatchers are almost impossible. But then you might see its tail wagging, and you're going to go, oh, okay, that is actually one that I do know. That's the eastern phoebe, one of our latest flycatchers that stays later into the fall. And comes back the earliest in the spring. A real hardy, beautiful little bird, and a really neat species to get a chance to see. All right, so behavior can be really important. And then this is the last one here. So I would say location, although structure is also very obvious on this bird. But can somebody give me in the chat some descriptors of the location or habitat here? Really, habitat is more what I'm talking about. And while you're giving me some things in the chat about the habitat, I did see a question, which field guides are these pages from? So I'm going to type the answer here, but I have been using the Sibley guide. That one has the kind of overview page. I have been using the Peterson guide, and that one has the fall warblers. And then I have also shown just a couple pictures from the National Geographic guide, which that one has just the really, I would say it's the beautiful guide. It has really artistic and beautiful drawings, which can sometimes really help, can sometimes make it a little difficult, but I've just sent that response there. So hopefully you guys can see that in the answered questions. Those are the 3 field guides that I think I've drawn from for this. All right, so we see some folks are giving us some stuff in the comments here. This is definitely a wetland bird. Yeah, don't let what Benjamin just said. Sibley, don't let Sibley hear that. That's the beautiful guide. Sibley's drawings are also very beautiful as well. But I think the stylized version of the National Geographic ones, the colors really pop. But anyway, so this bird is in a wetland, and the wetland habitat kind of limits the birds. There's not a lot of birds that walk in the water too. So not only is it in a wetland, but it's walking with its feet in the wetland and the rest of the body up, which gives us an idea that it's in the heron group. So here's an example of the herons of North America. And really, this is nice. When you see a bird walking in the water, it's probably either a shorebird or a heron. And herons are larger than a chicken, whereas shorebirds are mostly smaller than a chicken or chicken sized. And so this really kind of narrows it down. And then you can see that the herons have very striking patterns. So patterns would kind of be the next thing there. And if you are looking at this here, you'll probably be able to pick out that this is, again, it's almost like the white-breasted nuthatch has that very black cap with a contrasting white face. And that may have led you to see that this is the black-capped night heron, black-capped night heron. So it's actually a nocturnal bird, but in this time of year, they are going to be out and about. So all right, so there's just a recap again: structure, pattern, relative size, behavior, location. I know that sounds a little intimidating, and it takes a lot of practice, but if you can remember those 5 characteristics and remember to take notes when you see birds, you're really going to start to build a foundation to become a solid birder. If you rely just on color and just on pattern, you can definitely advance in your birding skills and get better. But if you can start to think all 5 of these things working synergistically together to help you figure out what the species is, you're going to build up to a really strong birding core. And I know it's confusing and that it can be hard when you're first starting out. I will say, if you're really overwhelmed every time you see a bird, you just don't have a lot of references or experience yet, go out and bird with other birders if you can. There are lots of great social media groups where people share their bird trips. There's local Michigan Audubon chapters across the state that host walks and hikes. I just hosted a walk with our university here Sunday night with college students. It was really fun. But if you don't have that chance, try the Merlin Bird ID app. Again, this is the Merlin Bird ID app, the Merlin Bird Identification app. It's from Cornell University. And it, instead of just showing you all the birds and saying good luck, it actually asks you a series of questions. What size was the bird? And it looks like they use like a sparrow, robin, crow, and a goose as their size references. And then what were the main colors? What was the bird eating? It asks you about 5 questions, and after you answer those, it'll give you a short list of birds instead of just showing you the whole guide. And this can really be a great way for beginners to help narrow down and to also think about those 5 questions, which are kind of key on, similar to those 5 characteristics I said. Yeah.
Elliot,
Yes.
let me break in really quickly. If you go back 2 slides, to this one. So go back to the night heron. There you go. So we did have a question, and it says, but the picture shows a yellow beak on the black cap night heron. So it's a good observation. And I wonder if you could explain that for us.
Yes. So this is, that's a great question. So this picture is probably just a little inaccurate, although they can have yellowish bills on their beaks. This is a painting from, I forgot to put the photo credit there. I hope it doesn't sue me. It's Rob Hall, I think. And this is you can order this online, but it's not going to necessarily be perfectly accurate. The other thing, though, is that especially in the fall, birds' colors aren't going to be exactly what they show in the field guide every time. Some birds are going to be juveniles and they're going to be growing into adulthood. And a juvenile black-crowned night heron does have a yellowish bill. And as it becomes an adult, that bill turns black. And depending on the specific bird, it may be a different timing sequence where that bill turns black. And so you may see a young bird that's in transition. Or with our fall warblers, some might still have some of their summer plumage left on them. And they might be shedding that and transitioning to that fall. And so you may see a little weird patch of blue that's not supposed to be on there. It should be brown. That's what the book shows, right? And so this is where it's really important to remember, you should not rely on one single feature, okay? Identifying a bird is like a puzzle. You have to put all the puzzle pieces together to be able to kind of build up, enough credibility to think, okay, I think I have that bird identified. If you're just looking at one specific feature and say, well, that one specific feature doesn't line up exactly like it shows in the book, you're probably not going to be able to identify as many species as if you looked at the bigger picture and tried to gather multiple pieces of evidence. So in this case, this bird does have the black crown, and it does have the white face, and it does have a black back, and it does have yellow legs, and it does have a long neck, which in the picture is not stretched out long, but you can maybe tell that it's squished up. So that might be though one of those things that's going to trick you up. You say, oh, it's not long, but it has a lot of other things that line up, and then you can maybe Google that bird to look for some other views of it or something, or consult with a social media or a friend birder and say, get a little more information on that species. But again, it's like a puzzle. So the more pieces of evidence, the more pieces of the puzzle you have that you can write down and sketch or write down, the easier it's going to be to kind of come to a conclusion that you feel comfortable with. A great question, whoever asked that. All right. So some common pitfalls. Actually, that was one right there. I wouldn't even say an over-reliance on cover, but an over-reliance on looking for that one specific thing. Like I said, size can be hard to judge without a direct comparison. So especially on like something, that's really, really close in size, like a Cooper's hawk and sharp-shinned hawk. If you don't have both species right there, you're probably not going to confidently be able to say, oh, that was the size of a Cooper's, oh, that was the size of a sharp-shinned, because they really are close in size, and even the males and females of one species and the other overlap in size. So those really close in size birds, trying to differentiate without both of them there, it's hard. And then the other thing was, like I said, memories fade very fast. So as soon as you start looking at other things, your memory may start to get adjusted by the pictures that you're looking at now. And so writing down those things you see before you jump to conclusions, before you jump into your book, can help you. And of course, it's okay not to ID every bird. I don't ID every bird. Sometimes I don't want to ID every bird. I just want to walk around and I want to enjoy the birds. And if I can ID a few, that's great. But sometimes I want to and I can't, and that's okay. You're not going to ID every bird. And that's the joy of birding, is that there's lots of ways you can enjoy it, and there's lots of room for growth. It's always a hobby that you can get better at, which I think is fun because I like learning new things. But it's always a hobby you can just go out and do, even if you're not good at, because it's fun to see the birds. All right, we're almost near the end here. So just want to give you 3 tips for your backyard for birding this fall. Leaf it, prep it, and feed it. Okay, these are the 3 things. The first one is probably I'll spend the most time on, and these things may not go over super well with your if you live in a suburb or in a community with strict lawn rules. Hopefully you can work with that community to maybe educate them on the environmental benefits of different lawn adjustments that you can make. But really, if there's any way you can leave some of the leaves, these create great habitat for a lot of different little bugs that the birds are really going to rely on. They will provide little spaces for many different creatures to live in that birds are going to eat either in the spring when they come back or in the fall. So of course, yeah, you probably can't leave all your leaves in your front yard, and you don't want your lawn to get completely crushed by them and disappear, but you can mulch the leaves, and you don't necessarily have to pick up that mulch. Those little tiny pieces, you can leave them there, and they'll actually work their way into the soil, and they'll refertilize your lawn naturally for you, and they'll provide spaces for extra things to be on. Now, this is a beautiful picture too. Who doesn't like some fall leaves, right? For those of you that are like, in the infinite battle with the leaves, I'm sorry to maybe ruffle your feathers here, but leaving the leaves can have a lot of benefits, and you could always just mow them or rake them up in the spring too. And then the other thing is to save the seeds. And so by that, I mean, if you have seed heads on your flowers, especially if you have gardens in the back, don't chop down the dead part of the flowers in the fall, because those actually have seeds in them, or maybe even bugs that live on those stems that the birds are going to eat. So I'm going to pull up this picture here. This is from a National Audubon article, which I have linked at the bottom here, and we can send you out an email afterwards. And the seed heads from many different flowers like asters and black-eyed Susans, coneflowers. These are many things that if you leave will provide a natural bird feeder. If you have sunflowers, you can leave those up. That's great. The third is build a brush pile. If you have a bunch of fallen branches from the fall, from a windy weather, you can stack those up and remove them or burn them in the spring and leave them over the winter and over the fall. And that's going to create extra habitat, especially if you'll find that all of a sudden you might have like a dozen sparrows on that brush pile, and you're going to get some really good birding experiences off that. So that provides space. And then if you can, skip the chemicals, especially insecticides, because birds eat a lot of bugs, and the more chemicals we use to kill bugs, the more of those chemicals that get up into the birds' bodies and into their tissue and can cause problems. So especially with the insecticides or rat poisons, really there's alternatives to that, because rat poisons get eaten by rat or mice, and then raptors eat those raptors and rat and mice, and they die as well. So instead, use a trap or something else if you can. All right, so there's that. The second is prep it. So this is a garden from Cindy here, and it's got some really amazing things. And this is in fall, so a lot of our gardens bloom and go crazy in the spring, but do a little planting this fall to plant things that will also bloom in the fall. And this is going to provide places for hummingbirds to come and enjoy. You can also use native plants when you come, like asters and coneflowers are beautiful. Mountain ash provides berries, and dogwoods do too in the fall. And so if you're using native plants, those plants are going to become food instead of just decoration. And you can have the best of both worlds with beautiful plants that are also wonderful food for our birds. And then the third one is to turn off exterior lights at night. So if you have an outdoor light that you like to leave on, consider getting a timer for it, because light pollution has become a big problem for birds. Birds, especially songbirds, use the stars to migrate, and too much light pollution can impact their ability to navigate, and can also attract them to places. So, in cities, this is a big problem, and there's a lot of initiatives, like Detroit Audubon is working with the city of Detroit to try to get lights turned off at night during peak migration times. But even in your own home, if you have an outdoor light, consider putting it on timers so that it goes off when you go to bed. It'll save you money on electricity, and it'll help the birds out. And then last but not least, of course, feed the birds. Maybe you fed them all summer, but if you haven't, get those feeders back up. Hummingbird feeders is a question a lot of people ask, and you can leave those up as long as you can. So we get really odd hummingbirds that will they're gone by the end of September, but there's a lot that might stick around, or not a lot, some hummingbirds, some ruby-throateds that might show up in October. And we've even had super rare hummingbirds in Michigan show up in October and November. So if you leave your hummingbird feeder up longer than your neighbors, you might end up with one of the state's rarest birds in your own backyard. So if it's not frozen and it's still fresh, I would say leave your hummingbird feeder up, because you never know. But at least through September, that's going to be the main push of the migrant ones. Get that bird seed out, and then don't forget to clean your bird houses at the end of the season. If you have bird houses with nests in them, you can remove the nest. You can use soap and water to clean out anything that's stuck on there, and then a 10-to-1 water to bleach solution to sanitize them. And the same thing with your feeders. Clean with water and mild soap, and sanitize with a 10-to-1 water bleach solution. And of course, safety goggles, gloves, mops. I don't know. I just found this picture. But anyway, so clean your feeders, clean your things, and feed the birds. And with that, I just want to remind you that fall is one of the coolest times to go birding. I want to get to some of your questions, but just know that fall is also the time where crazy rare things came up. A few years ago, this bird, a barrel-in hummingbird, was found in Grand Marais, Michigan, up in the UP. And I don't know if you see the range map, but it's a super rare bird anywhere in the US. And the only place people ever see it is in southeast Arizona normally. And it's very rare there. And one showed up in the fall in the UP, because crazy stuff happens in the fall. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing it. Well, I'm going to leave this up, but I'm going to start getting to some of the other questions here. So somebody asked about disease with bird feeders. So I got a lot of questions on the Ask an Expert website, where you can ask any extension professional a question about a disease that was sweeping through the New England mainly, but even the Midwest too, that was impacting blue jays and other corvids and some other species as well. Currently, I am not aware of any disease outbreaks at this time in the state of Michigan, but you should always keep an eye on your birds. Conjunctivitis in finches is a common problem on feeders. You might see a bird with a crusty eye. And if you ever see a bird that's sick, the key is to probably take down your feeders right away, clean them, and maybe leave them down for a week or two till those birds move on, because you don't want birds that are sick congregating together in big groups. But if you don't see any sick or diseased birds and you're cleaning your feeders on a weekly or month, every couple of weeks or so, then you really should be okay. And somebody else asked, when do the hummers begin to migrate? You can always check eBird to see that, but September is the main migration month, even starting in late August. And normally by the end of September, most of the hummingbirds are gone, although you'll still have a few in the first week of October, and they should be gone by then. But like I said, crazy rare ones, and even just regular ruby-throated hummingbirds occasionally show up throughout Michigan in October, and they really rely on that food to stay alive from your feeder because there's not as many flowers left. So hopefully that helps answer that. So somebody else asked about something I said earlier, that some birds don't stay with their youngs. So birds do stay with their young until they're fledged. So not always, sometimes it's just the female, or in some cases it's just the male, not both birds necessarily, but birds will, at least one adult will always stay until the eggs are hatched and the birds are able to fly. And so that always happens, but birds only take a few weeks to grow from hatchling to be able to fly. Some birds can grow up to be able to fly in like 3 weeks or less. And so it can be a very short amount of time that it takes for a bird to go from hatching from the egg to being able to fly and be on its own. And then depending on the species, parents will stick with those birds for a month or two and some won't. I've got one more question about a really rare thrasher at Bay City State Park. Really crazy rare things do show up. So you never know, but if it's a really rare, crazy thing, you really want to document that well, to really make sure you've ruled out any other possibilities, because that thrasher species is pretty rare. There's young mockingbirds, there's young brown thrashers that can kind of look like that too. So just a good thing to document, but if you find it, that's awesome. So that's kind of the questions that I saw in the Q&A there, and we are at 8:01. That's actually a lot earlier than we normally wrap up.
Good job, you, Elliot. Well, it has been fantastic to hear you yet again talk about all this awesome birdage, and I am so happy that folks have been able to join us, and we will be back next week, same time, same station. Invite your friends, and we will be talking all things raptors, and I can't wait. That's going to be fun. So thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week.